Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
Today I'm going to tell you a story, and I want you to spend some time thinking about your story. I want you to spend some time doing some internal reflection this morning. Think about the path that God has brought you on. All the millions of little things that have had to happen for you to be sitting here today in this same building with these people for such a time as this.
Amen.
So before I get into it, take a second. Let's take 1 minute. I'm going to give you 60 seconds. Everyone close your eyes. Think about the story that God has put you on, the place that God has brought you, and for what purpose do you feel He is driving you towards. And if you have a phone, if you have a piece of paper, I want you to write down in one sentence. Write it down in one sentence. I'll give you 60 seconds. I feel a sense of purpose and destiny in the room today. And I don't know if it's a joke, but Pastor, I don't know if this is intentional, but there are 2 pennies up here. I don't know if that meant you're going to put in your 2 cents. I don't know. Is that?
Sister Gibson.
Oh, so she put in her 2 cents. Okay. So thank you for that. That's a good reminder. How many know the author and finisher of our faith? How many know there is someone writing down every page of your story? Today I want you to think about what is your story, and I want to start with a story. If you travel down into Belize, anybody know where Belize is? Central America? It's kind of where the Caribbean and Central America connect. And you travel, you'll meet some folks like this, some friends of ours just like this. And on the bottom right is actually the church. It's United Pentecostal Church there in Punta Gorda, in the southern part of Belize. And these are Mayan Indian tribes that live there. They're awesome. And you drive about 8 hours south of, if you land in Belize City, you drive about 8 hours and you run out of paved roads and it starts looking like this. You'll see a family like this. This is Elfina and Marcos, who's a pastor there. And they work with many churches in the villages in the surrounding area, and their daughter. We originally went down there to work with them on how to help the pastors in the villages start chicken farms. They said, this is something we're really good at, and we would love your help to help us come. We need investment. Can you help us start these chicken farms so we can have sustainable sources of income and do more to reach our community, to have a sense of pride, and to also be able to do more with what they have. So this is actually in one of the church buildings, doing a workshop. We help fill out business plans with them, put together a strategy, and work with investment to launch chicken farms. While we're doing this, Elfina is there as well. And she stepped out to make us lunch at one point. This is her kitchen. Their house is just outside of the church. And she makes rice and beans and chicken just over their open fire stove there. And we noticed that they have this ancient Mayan weaving technique. And we said, could you perhaps make an impact junkie X, which we have the X symbol. She said, I think I can. So she worked on it, and the next morning we came back and she had prototypes. And we said, Ophelia, what if we helped you turn this into a business to help your family? It costs $75 a year in U.S. money to send their kids to school. And they struggle with that, with healthcare, with other things, while trying to fulfill and spread the gospel and do what they can to change lives in Belize. So he said, I think that's a great idea. And so we said, we'll take everything you got. We put it up on the website, and we sold out instantly, and we had a backlog of pre-orders. Yeah, which is great. And it started out small, and we actually have some of the bands here today, if you'd like to get some, for $15 to support this awesome work. So 5 months later, that was earlier this spring, we came back 5 months later, and what do you think we found? Look what we found. Boom! Suddenly, all these women are experts in how to make Impact Junkie dance. Alphenia has created a network of women. They've come from buses, they've come from other villages, and it is beautiful what they've done. And my favorite photo is this. Alphenia with a big smile and a big stack of cash. And this is how I ended up standing in this spot. People say, how did you end up standing here in their home, doing an entrepreneurship workshop and helping them connect their passion, purpose, and calling that God's placed in their life? They all went up and put up their dreams on the chalkboard we had, and we started working on plans. We also, to celebrate the venture, she got her cell phone, which was a really big deal, and it's awesome. And we took them to celebrate, and they weren't as comfortable ordering off a menu because that's not normal for them. And so we said, order whatever you want. And her husband, Marcos, the pastor, ordered a half a chicken, mashed potatoes, chicken chow mein, and a quesadilla. And we sit there and watched him, and he's about this tall. And he ate all of those, and it was fantastic. And later he took us out into the jungle overnight with machetes and flame. And Zach was on that. Zach was on that as well. And we survived. But we introduced them to nachos too, which is a fun thing. If you ever get a chance to introduce some nachos to someone. So I want to tell you that story and a couple of other stories to make a point here. That if you go to Genesis 41, verse 38, this is the culmination of Joseph. And we know this story of Joseph. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite stories. He's one of my favorite characters. And we all know Joseph was given a dream. He was given this dream, his calling by God, and it was a painful journey to get there, right? And I honestly believe in every situation that Joseph was in, he felt like this is going to be the culmination of that dream that God put inside of me. Why was he thrown in the pit? Why did he become a slave? Why was he thrown in prison after all these things? I believed in every situation, he believed, this is where God is writing my story. This is where I'm supposed to live out the dream that God placed in my heart. And I believe he worked. I believe he was a type A, and I believe he's a slave, but this is going to be the best run house there is in all of Egypt. I believe he was thrown in prison. He's like, this is going to be the best ran prison that there has ever been in Egypt. And ultimately we get to this point where Pharaoh's had these dreams and he's troubled, and Joseph comes and interprets the dreams, and this, you know how the story goes, and this is such a beautiful point in this story where Pharaoh says, what are we going to do? And God had been preparing Joseph all along for this moment, and he stands in front of him and says, here's what you need to do, take 20% for the next 7 years, set it aside, right? Joseph, he got his undergraduate, he got his graduate, he got his street smarts, he got all the education he needed. God had prepared him all along the way, so that when that moment came, he's like, here's what you need to do. You just need someone, someone filled with God's Spirit that can help you figure this out, and, if you could find someone. And Pharaoh looks around, he says, this is a great plan. And he said, can we find such a one as this? A man in whom the Spirit of God is. And I want to leave you with that thought today. Maybe you're the one. Maybe you're the one to reach that one.
Amen.
That no one else can.
Right.
Maybe you're in that God has brought you to a certain place for a certain purpose, for a certain time. He's writing every page, and you may be going through some difficult times right now and not understand it. But he's faithful. And when you look at the entire Bible, you can see it as just a series of stories where there's a calling that's given out. And then there's a faith test. Maybe there's a dream that's planted in someone. There's a purpose that God says, here's a thing that you can do that I would love for you to do to fulfill this destiny that I've prepared for you. And then there's a faith test. And it says, what are you going to do now? And in order for that miracle to happen, in order for that great thing to succeed, for you to go to that next level, there's got to be that human act of courage. And then that divine intervention just flows in. And that's when the miracle happens. And you can see that over and over and over. From the beginning, the first humans on earth, to when Jesus came on earth, he did the same thing. He said, what do you want to do? Are you going to step up? Are you going to take action on this? And when that happened, that's when the miracle happens. So I want to encourage you today that you may be the one. You may be the one that's going to reach the one. And the big, hairy, audacious goal we have, the big, hairy, audacious goal, when it all comes down to the end, is just to hear, well done. Nothing else matters. And Jesus gave us the last parable, the last story he told us before the crucifixion, according to Matthew, is the last two of the parable of the talents and the parable of the sheep and the goats. He said, basically, I'm going to give you some things. Just hang on. I'm going to give you some gifts. And then I'm going to come back and see, what did you do with that? What did you do with what you were given? And the ones who were good stewards, who answered that call, who stepped out in the times that were difficult, the fog and the mist where you couldn't quite see, but you felt God tugging you and step out of the boat. It's me. It's okay. You're going to have eternity to sit and talk about those stories. I want to have some good stories to talk about with him. So today, what is your story? And one way to think about your life journey, this is not mine, but this is something I took as an example. You can sort of, if you're a visual person, you can sort of map out the path that God has you on, the path that you've been going through in your life, and you kind of start with this bay of awareness, and you're moving through, and there's these really scary goals and dreams that you feel like God's placed in your heart, and you don't quite see how those are possibly going to connect, and if you do, there's this big canyon in between, and there's a lot of rivers I'm going to have to cross and mountains, and it's really scary and hard. But if you look back, you can see the dots that God's been connecting in your story. And it may not make sense right now, but it will. And suddenly you're going to be standing before Pharaoh, and it's all going to make sense. This is a great exercise that I've done for myself, and I encourage you all to do. This is news you can use. Take some time and really reflect on what God has done in your life, where He's taking you, the things He has put into your life, and how He infused with that divine inspiration and that divine intervention. What has He been trying to call you to? What has He been opening, the doors He's been opening for you? And this, in one slide, I can tell my life story. And I've been traveling a lot of places and sharing this story, starting with growing up in California as a youth pastor. My dad is a pastor, and being involved in the community and loving youth and changing lives and launching, having this entrepreneurship drive in my heart and my life, and launching different startups, leading to running for student president at Harvard over 3,000 miles away, and how scary and uncomfortable that was, and feeling a calling to government and maybe public service, but still that entrepreneurship, and I didn't quite understand it. And I have friends that are like, why are you going all the way across the country? And I'm saying, I don't know, but I feel it, and I've been praying, and I feel like this is where God wants me to go. And the honest to goodness, you never really know. I don't think you ever really know, right? If you say you know, I mean, you're maybe like 80%, maybe, and that's good. But I think God set it up that way, so we have to step out. So we have to step out and be uncomfortable. And when He sees that, like all of heaven's attention starts looking that direction. It says, start sending reinforcements. Someone just stepped out by faith, and it's getting crazy. All right, so Rochelle and we moved our family over to the East Coast, which is so crazy, and this moment of, going to work in Congress and being connected here, and all the amazing doors that God has opened, and then going back and finishing my master's and being able to selected and speaking about divine destiny and the hand of God guiding you, and this clear chapter closed. One chapter ends and another one opens, and find myself, after feeling that draw to government and service, to being in the West Wing and taking a selfie in this Roosevelt room, which is great. If you're in the West Wing, you got to take a selfie, but act like you're paying attention to the meeting, so no one knows you're taking a selfie. To running the Great Pitch Competition, a $16 million fund in government for good for government ideas, that was later going to be the same thing we take to National North American Youth Congress and help young people connect their passion to use that for the kingdom, and to see that your business life, your career, your education don't have to be something separate from the church and from your walk with God, but they can be used and leveraged for your ultimate purpose, for what God wants you to do. And how I ended up 2 years after standing on that stage, standing in Haiti in mud, going from what seems like this grand stage to standing in mud, helping dig water wells and launching a water well digging venture with the village that churches, schools, and orphanages there, to Nepal and others. And that's how I ended up standing out here in the jungle of Belize. And how I'm on a crocodile-infested waters, an elephant, to Turkey at a business conference, to spending a night, overnight in the jungle making s'mores, which is great, with the pastors there, to Uzbekistan, and standing up saying these same things about do more with what you've been given, and what's your purpose, to orphanages in Honduras, to this place. What does this make you think of? What does that look like? It looks like a prison. Anything else? Wet, it's dark, it's kind of murky, the clouds are coming in, right? This is a photo I snapped. Rochelle was in the car going into a refugee camp just outside of Athens, Greece. And you want to talk about uncomfortable. We had people saying that you're not able to go into these refugee camps. It's dangerous, or you're just not allowed. And God opened the connections and we were able to go in. And in this moment, you're thinking, well, this may be the last thing we do, but we're going to go on. And inside this refugee camp, we found this. This is an organization that had taken a shipping container and converted it into a salon for the women to give them some sense of normalcy. And it's bright, and you go inside, it has the chairs with the sinks to lay down and have your hair washed, and there's a little area for the kids to play. And it gives the women jobs and also some sense of normalcy. And this is one of the best refugee camps there. Over 4 million have fled, maybe more than that, from Syria. Actually, if you take Chicago and New York City from Syria, imagine if Chicago and New York City, all of them had been displaced. And then imagine if you filled the Rose Bowl 5 times and you killed everyone. Every time. That's kind of what's happening in Syria. So in that context, they're fleeing that civil war, and there's 2 families per each of these units with a bathroom in between, and maybe families of up to 5. Many have been separated. And we found a coffee shop right in the middle of this refugee camp. We found a restaurant right in the middle of this refugee camp. They'd taken the UN emergency refugee paper and made a wallpaper, printed out food and a burner like you might take on a camping trip, and had their whole kitchen set up, and they had take out or dine in. Wow. In this context, we met WeDot. We got to go over to her house for dinner, which is a great thing. And we had someone who went on this and said, I've never felt more like Jesus than to go over to someone's house for dinner. That's kind of like what he did. And she and her 12-year-old son floated over on a raft from Turkey, fled through Turkey over on a raft with just their cat. Her husband was shot in their home. He was a businessman, she was a school teacher, and they had 2 other daughters, and they were separated. She worked for 2 days to make this amazing meal for us on 2 little burners, like you'd take on a camping trip. And this is actually a video, it's a little clip of that. And she said, we said, we love you so much, we just wanted to come and share love with you and be with you. And she said, you show me how much you love me by how much you eat. And anytime there was an empty spot on our plate, she would scoop up an extra scoop and put on our plate. And we said, we're so full, and she just kept bringing the food. And in this situation, we said, how can we do more with what we've been given? How is something, when you think back of your life story and the connecting the dots, and think, what if there's something we could do to help them? And so we had this idea, this food is so good, what if we created a cookbook? We said, what if we created an online cooking show, and she could share these recipes. She'd never written down these recipes, these traditional Syrian dishes, she just had them from memory. We said, what if you write them down and we can translate it from Arabic to English and tell your story? She said, that sounds wonderful. This is a Facebook video feed that we did with them just a couple of months ago, and we're working on the book and doing pre-sales and releasing it later this year. And then she's been reunited with her daughters, and she said, I just feel like so much love from you all. And there's so many more things I could tell about this story and the connections in that refugee community. Specifically, the church in Athens had not been able to go into any refugee camps up until this point, and through this connection, they've been able to go in there now, which is amazing. There's just a lot. There's a lot to share. And she said, to live without work has been death. And she said that what you're doing, anyway, all that to say, maybe I'm the one. Maybe we're the one to reach this one. Right. We go to Brazil. This is the last one I'll share. There's so many stories that's so wonderful. But in Brazil, there's a missionary family. They have an orphanage, and in their community, they have a water well, and the water well had broke, and they were on their reserve with 3 days left in their water well. And they reached out, when Amer was there, reached out and said, can you help us figure out how we can have water? And so we worked together with Wells of Life and got funding, and we said, when we notified them that there was funding to get the well started again, they were literally standing around the well, holding hands, praying. And the message came in and said, we're going to help you get the well. They said, this is so great. We said, well, hold on. How can we help you in the future to create sustainable streams of income so you're not in the same place anymore, where you're not standing around a well praying that God will hopefully send you? They said, say that again? You're not going to believe this. They said, someone actually came and prophesied here not too long ago and said that God was going to use us to help economically to help our community and to bring jobs to the people. And we said, that sounds great. They said, we have 7 ideas. We would love to start immediately. And we helped them finance, actually through a church youth group in Connecticut, helped us as well. We raised the funds to invest in their sewing machines and figuring out what skills they have, and put these women to work across their city, developing these bags. And this is the missionary's wife there. And it's a beautiful story. And their son just did these Christmas cards, and this is actually Rachel, the Armstrong's daughter, is become one of the entrepreneurs who went to Nepal with us. And this is the missionary's son to help fund the activities there. He created these Christmas cards, and they're selling them. And this is, actually, it's amazing you're here today. This is Rachel, their daughter, the Armstrong's daughter, and Zach, her husband, who also just adopted a beautiful baby boy, Kedrick. And they went with us to Nepal. I don't have time to tell the whole story, but what she is now, she has this beautiful story that she wrote about going to the orphanages there. This was just before they had adopted; they were in the process, and she says a beautiful line about, "This is my purpose. I found how to connect my purpose and my calling, and what I want to do." And she is now running full steam with Resilience Creative, where you can upload a picture and the kids will draw them, and it's connected with entrepreneurship and business training. And in a country that, I don't want to talk about all the things publicly, but there's a lot that we can talk about what's going on there. And there's many other stories. And so, all that to say, I want you, in closing, just to think about your story. And so, when I say, maybe you're the one. Maybe you're the one, and you don't see how those dots have all connected in your life, or maybe you need to just spend some time reflecting. And I shared some of those to think, I have a lot of these, the last 2 years I've had a lot of these moments of, how did I get here? How am I standing here? And I'm sure you go through those moments in your life as well. And if you look back, you see God has been preparing you, even though you've been going through that pit, even though you went to prison, even though you were thrown into slavery, right? That was all part of God's plan for your life. So, who are you the one for? Not just are you the one, but who can you be the one to share love with? To share Jesus with? So, last 20 seconds, look back at that list, that sentence you wrote. I want you to pray over that this week. And think about, God, what purpose, what plan, what calling have you placed in my life? And I'm so excited. The kingdom of God is so much richer, so much more diverse than sometimes we can even imagine. We couldn't even comprehend. When David got that dream and why did God give him the dream of the thing that was like wheat bowing down? Because if he'd actually showed him what it was, Joseph would have freaked out. So I don't think he would have believed it. And I believe that's the case for each and every one of our lives in this place. The potential that exists in this room to impact the world is unbelievable. And I want us to connect our passion, purpose, and calling. And today you can be the one.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. That was pretty incredible.
Amen.
Would you stand with me? And we're going to pray for Brother Harding. And I think it's gotten so much bigger than Impact Junkie. I think when it's changing my thoughts and my feelings about, because we know that recently we had Vladimir and Rebecca here from Kyrgyzstan, and they had to go back. We raised the funds, by the way, and bought their airline tickets, and they are now back there. He went to help work with that situation, and they sent me pictures this morning. They end up baptizing that man. Situations always include people. They end up baptizing that man today in the name of Jesus. But I will say, Brother Harding had mentioned to me that maybe we could do something to help Vladimir and Rebecca to have some type of business, something that will help them fund their work in Kyrgyzstan. And you know, that looks a whole lot different to me than just going drilling water wells. No offense, brother. I mean, that really sounds like there is some kingdom stuff involved in it. And I thank God for, I do believe this, folks. I believe if we're going to impact our world, our thinking has got to be bigger. I do think that. I think somehow God has to expand the way we see things, the way we see people, and the way we see opportunities that God has put in before us. So much I could say, folks. We have a preacher. I think they call that preacheress. We have a young lady. Brother Eric, would you get me that other podium, please? And Sister Kristen, would you come and translate? So, turn and greet your neighbor. I see we have some other guests here today. Is that, I see, yes, from Lexington Park. Some young people are here. We're so glad you're here. Amen. And I think I see Sister